Okay, so this is webinar 51, and Moral will be joining us in a few minutes. But this class is is kind of seminal in some ways because we're talking about the one aspect of psychoneurology, which is PEI, which is really the psychology or psychoneurology, whatever either way, you don't have to say them both, of ethical influence. What are really the factors that have people change, but also what are the factors that make people willing to trust you to guide them in a way that helps them? And what is it that we see in people that makes us go, I'll follow that, I'll follow him or I'll follow her anyway, anywhere. And part of it is we see ourselves in them. Part of it is we see that we see things about them that we like or wish would like to like in ourselves. Of course, you need both. You can't just see the things you like in that future person. You got to be able to see yourself, and also that you see the person can help you get there. You are convinced that the person can help you get there. All of that is still trumped by feeling they truly get you. So I'll be bringing in more information that will, again, hit it from different angles so you get it in your gut, even about story, the concept of story. You're all familiar that pretty much most companies and most sales have a particular story. And, who's the hero of your story? Anybody have an idea? It's not your product or service. If your product or service are the hero of the story, then, now we do that in our own lives, yes, but if you're doing it with your marketing, you're going to be ineffective for sure. They're not going to feel they need to be the hero of the story. Every customer is the hero of their story. And so basically, pretty much it's all like, you've seen it with Joseph Campbell, you've seen it in Star Wars. Basically, there's the hero, then there's the villain, which is an issue or problem. Okay. Hi there. Welcome, Z. Didn't expect to see you today. Welcome, Valerie. Okay. Welcome. And who else is coming on the Samsung? Is that you, Valerie? Are you doing both or something? The Samsung is logging in as well. Oh, well.
I wasn't sure if there was a technical difficulty. So I just left my other one.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay, good. So we've got two Valeries, which is extra doubly special. So we were talking here about the concept. One of the things we're going to talk about more in psychoneurology is what we're calling PEI, which is the psychology or psychoneurology of ethical influence. And how does that really, every time we're helping someone, every time Beurin Katie creates a shift in someone, she's influencing them, isn't she? Every time we do this, we talk about psychoneurology's learning. That means we're influencing. We're creating, a new learning, even hopefully in the gut, on the gut level. And to do that, there's going to be different processes. But there is one concept about how humans think, and it's called, one of them we'll talk about. I'm not going to show the video of this class because I want to get more of the understandings really embedded in you first about, how, what this really has to do about understanding, fully understanding and listening. So we'll do a piece from Dean that's gold on this, and we'll also start the concepts of the 6 structures of influence, where this person has basically spent his whole life studying the understandings of what are the things that actually influence people. There's basically 6 of them. And, but we were talking for a moment about story, and every story has a certain structure. There's the hero, and in this case, our client, our patient, or our customer is the hero, not us. If we are, if we're the hero, then one, they're not going to relate, or worse, we're in competition for them. We're actually like a competing hero, and that's not good. So basically, so what are we? And I'll talk about that in a second. So the hero then has usually a villain or a challenge, right? And the villain is not, it can be a real person, but it doesn't need to be a real person, but it can't be a state. It's not going to be something like frustration or something like that. It could be a system that gets them nowhere and is antiquated and old and they're stuck in it and that creates frustration. That's different. So there's the hero, the villain, and then somewhere along all these stories, what happens to the hero? They find a guide, right? Obi-Wan Kenobi, whoever it is, Colby-Wan Kenobi, or any one of you, if we change your name into that, it's that. And that guide helps them eliminate certain issues, right? And go on to success, all right? To the success they want. And that's a structure that we want to tell our story from, okay? So we're going to have those stories. We're going to learn how to structure those stories so we can tell them that way. And B, that's still going to be secondary to them feeling that we get them. To really have someone see, what does John Weiland talk about in relationships? Helping your partner be what? Seen, heard, and felt. He's just hitting modalities kind of there, isn't he? I mean, really, it's like kinesthetic and auditory and, and visual, right? Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, seen, heard, and felt. That's what it is, But if your client, patient, or customer feels, God, she completely gets me, she really knows where I'm at, then your guidance, your support, your recommendations are coming from someone they feel really gets them and cares about them. And that makes all the difference in the world. So that's really the magic of it. All the things that are like manipulative and saying little things and doing things, that's not really what, that's not really what the sum and substance of this is. However, like in terms of those 6 things, like there's certain laws that are the way our minds work. So it doesn't hurt to have some of them. For example, it's good to know the ones that'll shut someone down. You know what I mean? You want to, if you're trying to help them and give them a new learning, and then you say something that completely makes them go, no, it's not that, before you even say it, it's good not to know what not to do as well as to know what to do. So just understanding those and integrating those will help you. And what's better about it is when you watch Virginia, or even when you watch some of these things, you'll see those elements in the people that you really like. The people that you really like, you'll go, oh, they got that. I see it. They just naturally do it. So we're going to become consciously competent. And I hope this is not the way they usually talk about the model, but I hope we'll become unconsciously competent. They used to say, oh, you're unconsciously competent. We want to help you become consciously competent. No, we want you to become unconsciously competent, because that will guide you in a much more effective way. And I would love you to feel when you meet someone, instead of, have any of you ever had to start selling or teaching or whatever, and you got into a moment, this is not the good place, by the way, where you feel like you got to tell them how great you are or how good your stuff is, or how helpful what you're going to do is? Isn't that totally different than stepping into a place where you want to care about someone? When you just want to hold a space where you really take them in and care about them, and then maybe even love on them a little bit or so. And out of that space and that care, you actually have stuff that works, that can really change their life, that can really help them. In my old days, I was like, I don't even need to care about them. that was my notion, was like, because Richard was so mechanical. I was like, we're technicians. And if you came into this program years ago, like when Newsham first came in, probably like 8, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, I was like, we're technicians. We're basically technicians. We're not, we're here to create a change, and we do it very reliably. And that's why you come. It's true. However, beyond that, you're going to feel emotionally more fed when you actually care about the people you're working with. And I used to care anyway, but I just didn't articulate it. You know what I mean? Remember I said I can't help someone I can't love? I hope that's true for you too. So one of our aspects of psychoneurology, without a doubt, is, PEI, is the concept of really the psychology of ethical influence, or the psychoneurology of ethical influence. It's really about understanding what are the elements that reach someone on the deepest level and help them change. And so what I want you to get into an attitude of, if some of you feel like sales can be a little tense, what if there's something going on? You can wear a whole different frame where none of that really comes up. We talked about with Rush Ruffino, the doctor thing. And for some of us, that was pretty profound, right? It definitely was helpful for me. This is even for me, even a little bit beyond that. because I still can be directive, but it's totally coming from a place of caring. You know what I'm saying? And that way, if your person takes your help, you feel great about it, don't you? And if they don't take your help, you still feel great about it. You still feel good about your part, and that's winning no matter what. Okay, so that's why PEI is so important. You know, and you know, I know we say we do this in therapy, and we do. We keep our hand open and we let them take things, but it helps when you offer something that's directly what you know. You offer them the food that they're craving, that you know they need, that they're starving for, you know, and that's part of it. They still can choose not to eat or eat, but you can really feel like what you gave from your heart. So you're more integrated, you know, you're more integrated with you and who you are in the world and your life. Okay. So integration, Chris, is like a big aspect that we, you know, that you're going to find they don't have in NLP and the other concepts. They're not really teaching fully integrated to come from your heart, but be effective as hell too, you know, and do both of those things really synergistically. Effectiveness and efficiency that nobody else can do, but guided by, now if you want to be a robot about it, you'd say unconscious calibration rather than conscious calibration, which is a mechanical way of saying moving from your heart. So home plate question number one is that, you know, home plate question number one is, what is a simple way of saying mechanical, unconscious calibration for excellence? And I reverse it that way so that just people will catch that first. What is a more simplistic way to explain mechanical unconscious calibration? And it simply means what? Coming from your gut, your heart, your emotions. And it's really where your genius comes in, letting your genius, and it's an integral part. You cannot do psychoneurology without that. There is no way to look at a theoretical book that does not take in unconscious calibration, which is frankly emotional calibration. You can't leave your unconscious out of the picture. When people are trying to be scientific and erudite about intellectualizing analysis, that's like psychoanalysis. That's not going to, you know, necessarily be effective in term, because there's just too much that your conscious mind won't pick up. There's just too much that has to be picked up with the gut, which by the way is also often why sometimes women, female people who have a higher integration between the left and right hemisphere sometimes are superior at certain modalities of therapy. And yet, isn't it interesting that the primary modality is very masculine, right? Like Freudian psychology, but that's because it looks in this world, which is external and not internal and not integrated. That looks better because it could stand on its own like a jungle gym without a human being there. You can kind of write about it. You can have a theoretical paradigm and it can stand there without somebody having to fill it up with their humanness, you know? And you can't do that with our work. And by the way, nobody effective that I've seen does, you know? So even if you want to describe, when people go, you know, a lot of times if people just want to come and they go, I just want to learn your work with the unconscious. You teach me Ericksonian psychoanalysis. It's like, I know you're thinking that there's just a simple unconscious structure I can teach you and you can go. A few years ago, some of you might remember, we had two therapists come in here, and one of them was actually an office mate of mine. And Ashley, who was one of my students, and she was really a student that I just did a little work with, not a lot. She is the coach or teacher of the other therapist that came in, and they just wanted very masculine, direct, just, you know, very masculine, direct, just give me, you know, just give me like 5 points and you know, what to do unconscious, you know, to do Ericksonian work. I'm like, you got to tune into your feelings. And they're like, well, yeah, aside from that. I'm like, you can't aside from that. You know, you have to like understand what you feel and then let your unconscious help you select even the words, because they'll have a feeling and you have to calibrate to the feeling. You cannot bypass the way you're trying to this process. And they were like, come on, there's got to be a faster, quicker, more, you know, basically more intellectualized way. And there isn't. There really isn't. So in my opinion, psychology, sociology, mental health has to move away from the concept of something that could be dry, intellectualized, and just memorized as in a formulaic way. You can have structure, of course, but it has to be filled up by unconscious calibration, which is what we like to dismiss as female stuff. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's woman stuff. That's feeling, that's intuition. That's what, well, that's unconscious calibration. That's really where the genius came in. You know, we said this years ago, but what did Einstein say about the theory of relativity? He said, and he used visual because that was the primary modality of the time. He goes, you will not be able to understand what I'm saying unless you can conceptualize. It's the only time he used that word, which is still vague, or picture what it's like to ride on a point of light and feel what it would be like. Well, if you look at Einstein, he's very kinesthetic. You can tell by his hair and his, you know, his look and his structure. You know, how could he create that at 19? He didn't have the mathematics, you realize, by the way. At 19, Einstein did not have the mathematical theories. So he did not deduce his way to the theory of relativity, did he? Because he didn't have the math to do it. He induced it. He understood. He felt his way to it. And from that, holding that that induction, he then had to deduce. And how, anybody know how many years it took him to get the mathematics for it? This guy worked day and night for almost 20 years to have to prove something he already knew in his gut. Okay. And, you know, but it worked. And it also, that understanding is so seminal in case anybody who's been here still doesn't get it, because it's possible. We've talked about it so many different ways, but it might not click in your gut. All of you, you know, part of what we want a psychoneurologist to be is a spirit, mind, body person. And part of spirit is understanding the construct of reality. And part of the construct of reality, you are not a mystic if you don't understand physics, okay? There is no such thing as a mystic, a modern mystic who does not understand the structure of reality. And the structure of reality, even though it's been mathematically proven, which is, God help you if you need that, but it's there. Basically, to understand what Einstein was saying is that all things in the universe are composed of energy in one form or another. I want you to think of it like water. Water can be steam, water can be ice, or water can be liquid, can't it? That's like energy. Energy can be frozen, and that's what Einstein's nemesis, Bohr's, called physical matter. He called it frozen light. I think these guys didn't like each other because they were so close to each other. They were like so similar. They annoyed the hell out of each other. You know what that's like. You know, I think Bohr's was like, you're an idiot. You know, and Einstein was like, you annoy the hell out of me. And they talked about, Einstein talked about what, big or small areas? Very, very large areas. Now, by the way, all of you must know this. So just because it's just so basic, okay? I'm going to start flipping class around. So you're going to talk back to me about these things and you're going to tell me about them because that'll help you. And also it'll, for some of you, it'll be helpful to go, oh my God, even though I've heard this for years, I didn't really integrate it because I can't say it, you know, and it doesn't count if you can't say what I'm teaching you, you didn't learn what I'm teaching you. Just pattern recognition is useless. Okay. Almost useless. Certainly isn't going to help you unless somebody walks up to you and says, so is Bohr's talking about big stuff or is Einstein? I mean, you should just know. Einstein was talking about very, very, very large spaces and Bohr's is talking about very, very, very small spaces. But for you to be aware, the stuff of life is energy. The stuff of life is energy. And light is part of the spectrum of energy too, but it's all energy. So that's relevant to us as psychoneurologists, okay? And one of the ways it's relevant to us is, okay, so just throw this in, okay? Because I think it peppers it. Why are you not a modern mystic unless you understand physics? And the answer is because you don't really, without an understanding of physics, you don't merge the mystical and physical understandings, which are real about the nature of reality, the nature of matter, the nature of physics.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, it's question number 2. And the question is, how are you not a modern mystic unless you understand physics? Have some understanding of, and you can say theoretical physics if you want, because really basic physics isn't so helpful. Newtonian stuff isn't helpful in this regard. And that's why a lot of people that are like, I'm a scientist, if they don't understand theoretical physicists, they're just a certaintist. They love certainty. They love to say things are a certain way, but that's not really understanding, because the nature of reality is energy. And that's what theoretical physics teaches us, you know? And by the way, along that, so, you know, along the next, did you, everybody finish that question, by the way? Because it's the nature of reality. Make sure you wrote it down. Sure, Z.
I have the question, but I'm not quite sure of the answer.
Okay, so the answer is,
I mean, I think I know, but.
right. The answer is because unless you're not really you're really not a modern mystic if you don't understand physics, because physics help us bridge with mysticism to help us understand the true nature of reality. So a physicist, a mystic who studies things goes, oh, there's light, and the world is composed of light, and it's called hidden light. Let's say if you're a Kabbalist, they say actually the name Olam, or universe, is the place where the light is in a hidden form, okay? But if you're a mystic, you go, yeah, of course that makes sense. That's what Einstein taught us. This is frozen light. Einstein, Yvonne, just so you know, Einstein taught us that everything physical is really a condensed, compacted form of energy. That's what E equals mc squared means. So basically, to a mystic understands that everything's energy. And to a theoretical physicist, they understand everything's energy. You know, so Einstein's theory is, he said it was as simple as poetry. But Einstein's theory says, why would, if any of you have ever wondered, have you heard that Einstein said everything in the universe can be broken down into this one simple theory? And why would that be? His theory is nothing more that, does everybody understand what E equals mc squared is? It's energy versus mass times the constant. In other words, if you want to take something out of matter, how much energy will you get from it? That's all it says. And then I flipped it around to something more interesting. So how much energy does it take to make a piece of matter? And it's the same thing, you just reverse it. You know what I mean? If I want to convert this to raw energy, then it'll be a ball of light times this size times 186,000 squared. So how much energy do I need to make one of these? Exactly the same thing reversed. I need all that energy to condense to make this ball of light. It's just simple math. It's literally as simple as addition and subtraction. So understanding that, you start to understand the concept of everything's energy. How is that relevant? Well, that's going to be, it's relevant to psychoneurology, and I'm going to talk about it in the next question. But first, make sure everybody understands that when you're walking through life, and this has nothing to do necessarily with religious or spiritual concepts, it's just the construct of what this stuff's made up of, okay? This stuff is made up of what a quantum physicist would say is frozen light, you know, and that's why I use water. Water can be solid, or it can be liquid, or it can be gaseous, can't it? And energy can be different forms too. How is this relevant to you? The neurology part of a psychoneurologist is also, it's not just subjective or objective neurology, it's subjective neurology. How does energy move through your system? How does energy move through your body? So then we'll make this nice and clean. So question number 3 is, how does energy impact on our understandings in psychoneurology? How does energy impact on our understandings in psychoneurology? And you could argue traditional psychology or those things don't specifically explicitly speak about energy. Okay. Some do, like but generally speaking, no. But with us, it is a part of psychoneurology. It's a mainstream part. If you're new like Z, maybe we haven't even talked about that, but it's in there. It's part of the lexicon, okay? And the lexicon comes up where? Like, Yvonne, if you're, I'm just watching you too, if you're at all confused, it's coming up in, think of the stuff you do like the Ophanim or the Qigong or any of those things. Specifically, you're moving energy a very specific way. And here's one of the best ways it comes up. So, but did everybody answer the question? And the question is, how does it play? How does energy play in psychoneurology? And the answer is, because psychoneurology is also the efficient and let's use the word intelligent, the intelligent direction of energy through our energy systems to create thriving. Psychoneurology is the intelligent direction of energy through our energy systems to create thriving. I'll say it a third time. Psychoneurology is the intelligent direction of energy moving through our energy systems to create thriving. Just giving you a minute to write. Okay. I gotta move this mirror out of the picture. I didn't realize it was in the back there. So, you know what I realized? I'm like a parrot. You know how a parrot needs a mirror in its cage to see another parrot? Like, I'm like that. I'm like, hey, there's another guy in here. So no, when I meditate, I use mirrors a lot. There's even a thing Master you gave us. It's a mirror meditation. But anyway, so everybody have, that's number 3, was it? Or I'm trying to stay on the numbers. Okay. So basically, psychoneurology, how does energy work with us? Because energy is everything. Okay. Different forms of it are everything. So really, mastery in life, for our understanding, is mastery of energy, which, by the way, will come out as master of emotions, because emotions are what? Emotions, energy in motion, energy in a very specific motion. So how does that show itself? Okay. And so I have to just make it really, really simple and direct, and you'll have a very nice fluid thing that, by the way, we're going to do a quote unquote test. It's not going to really be a test, but on this, so that each one of you can articulate this in a really clean way. So number 4 is, what are emotions? According to psychoneurology. And you could just put emotion and put an equal sign if you'd like, energy in motion, in a very particular motion. That's really what it is. Okay, you all wrote that, right? Okay. So, so then question number 5 would be, how specifically does a process / meditation like the Ek Onkar, ECK, second word ONG, third word KAR. How does a process like the Ek Onkar work in psychoneurology? And I'm going to explain all that in a very clean way that everyone understands. What's novel about psychoneurology? Many things. One of them is this. They hint at it in somatic psychology, by the way, but it's not expressly stated. In fact, I haven't seen it stated anywhere but us, and that is this. Part of your emotions, they have different parts of the cybernetic loop, don't they? Part of them is physiology, right? Part of them is how you put your mental focus, right? Part of them are questions you ask or how you direct yourself. of course. Part of them is unconscious in your story, right? Those are all part of it too. But there's another part that's extremely important. Part of it is how you are running energy through your chakra or through your energy system. Okay? Extremely important. Nobody talks about it. And that's why I love what we do together in the university, because when we explore things together, things become obvious to us. So years ago, it became obvious. Some of you know from, how many of you have used the Eckankar and really changed your state with it? I mean, like absolutely changed your state. Let me just see. Like totally changed it, right? Has it taken you out of fear? It has for me, absolutely, out of uncertainty. Why? How did it work? Why does it work? Okay, if it didn't, you probably, here's what's going to happen. Anyone who it didn't, you got emotional resistance, and you're going to have trouble with breathing and things like that, because the Eckankar will stop you from being in fear. And if you want to stay in fear, you won't do it. Do you get it? Does it make sense? If you have trouble with it, that's the one, or if you're working with a patient and they're having trouble with it, it's because they're getting secondary or something's going on with them not wanting to let go of fear. Because if you do the Eckankar properly, it's not, I don't have the only body here. Almost everyone I've ever talked to, if they're doing it properly, you can't run fear while you do it. It's just not available. It's not on the menu. Why is that? Because fear needs to bleed out of your lower chakras. So, so an example of how the Eckankar works is, our understanding is when energy bleeds from lower chakras, you have an entirely different experience, different thoughts, different, different things that come up for you. You're running different patterns when you have different chakras open. For example, if your first chakra is open, survival can become an issue more for you. If you're in fear of your survival, your first chakra is open, and that's an issue. If you got family issues, tribal issues, issues with being accepted by the larger klal. I like the word klal, by the way. It's an ancient Hebrew word, but it just means the big old group. Klal, it's a cool word. I'm going to make it part of our operational definitions. Actually, I do all the time anyway. But if you're interested, if you're worried about the bigger klal or your community or your etc., it's a first chakra issue. Second chakra issue is not just sexuality. That has to do with creativity, but it also has to do with a certain level of control. It'll bleed up to the third chakra, which is also an issue of control. Have you ever found yourself in a situation that you feel is completely undignified and not appropriate for you, and it's infuriating that you are being treated this way? If that's a third chakra issue right there. What's happening is your third chakra is bleeding. Now, I'll get into something without going into too much detail. I've kind of not quite sworn, but given my word to not go into. There's a group of young men I'm helping, and they're martial art. They're the 3 top martial artists in Mexico, and they're world champions, and they're having an issue that I'm not going to go into too much depth, even though it's relevant to us because it's our work. And I'm helping these people. And I was in transportation, and I found myself in a situation where I was stuck somewhere, like in an airport situation, all night. And there's a part of me, different thoughts came up. And I'm so glad I get to share it with you because I could feel the corresponding chakras. You know what I mean? So one of them came up was like, this shouldn't be happening to me. I'm not like these people. Or these are like homeless people. I don't belong here. That's a third chakra, right? And by the way, whenever I think of the third chakra, the best example I think of the third chakra, if you want to use a great example, put it down here. Best example of third chakra is Beavis and Butthead. Did you ever watch the cartoon Beavis and Butthead? Okay. The one funny thing about Beavis and Butthead is it so nails ego and third chakra because there's They're like Beavis and Butthead. They're like kids, right? And they're not being taken seriously by anybody, right? You can imagine like Wayne's World if you saw that or whatever. Nobody takes him seriously. So one of them, like, he always pictures he's like the president of the United States, and he has his finger on the nuclear button, and he's like, "How dare you talk to me that way? Do you know who I am?" And he blows up the world or whatever. I find that like that's the perfect thing, because as a little kid, I would always feel like that. I'd have a fantasy like, "How dare you talk? Do you know who I am?" And then like, if you can electrocute them or whatever, that's a third chakra issue. Okay. So third chakra is like my importance, my significance. I should be recognized. If you've got that need, if you want to be seen a certain way, you want to be seen in a certain clothing, a certain car, certain dignity, certain title, certain, respect, that's often a third chakra issue. Part of it is I want to be, when you feel offended about something. First chakra is also in there too, right? Because that's tribal as well, like where you are in the hierarchy. So I did have but for me, my first chakra issue came when I was stranded there. I wasn't really stranded, but I was stuck, was first chakra for me was like, I'm all alone, now I don't have a tribe to talk to about this or whatever. I don't have anybody to call up. No one's even supposed to know I'm helping these guys, or whatever. That's first chakra. But each one of them I could reject and go, nah, that didn't feel good. I was like, I don't belong here. Start to get really angry, at the airline. Nah, that's not going to go anywhere either. until I went, something fantastic is going to happen from this. Okay, that feels better. Stick with that one, buddy. Stay on that track. I have clarity here, et cetera, et cetera. And things would come up. And I don't know, you want to hear one of the positive things that I really came up with? Just because you're all so intimate with me, and a lot of us are talking about moving into what? We've talked about like instability. Remember we talked about that? And some of us have talked, and like I pledged to you all that I want to move into more instability, And then I was like, you know what? This is unstable as hell. I'm in a foreign country, or, I'm like stuck in the middle of no. This is pretty damn unstable, And I actually called my buddy who represents the ultimate stuckness. He was the one I told you was like in a little tiny place, has 2 hip replacements, doesn't want to go anywhere. He literally says, I don't want to do nothing. And then, I was like, I'm stuck here. How come I'm happier than you are? You got nothing to be, you can't be complaining. I'm like, how come I'm happier than you? He's like, you have all kinds of great things. Look at all, you get to travel around the world. I'm like, yeah, I'm stuck in, and I was even tempted to start complaining about my situation, but I was like, you know what? You're right. This is still better than being, and I didn't say you, but I was like being like that. This is still better than being stuck, not getting myself to move. You know what I mean? It's like, you could say that, Yvonne, you travel a lot, and you do too. All of you travel, actually, frankly. Most of you travel. If you don't travel, if you travel, one thing you can say is even in the worst travel, you go, at least I'm traveling. I'm moving. I'm in instability. I was like, this is really unstable. This is great. I'd rather do this. I'm living right now. I'm living. So all of that is what energy it wants to peak out. Do you get it? Like, it started peak out of my first chakra. That didn't feel good. Started peak out of my second chakra, that didn't feel good too. That was kind of like a different kind of anger. You know what I mean? Anger does come from the second chakra too, as well as the third. And then, third chakra, but finally when I just started coming out of like, you know what, when I look back on my life, I'd rather have had this, than just this, and I was like, okay. And then I've got you guys to talk to about it, which is great, but I couldn't call any of you in the middle because I was like, only now have I got, actually Helen, you all know Helen. Helen's intimately involved in this situation. So, it's Helen's group. These guys were like, came from the streets, literally homeless, and have created, imagine, a 3-story multi-million-dollar center because they're the best fighters in the world. God bless these guys. I love them. And, but they still need guidance, and they don't really have a spiritual master. They have the problem with mixed martial arts is they have technical coaches, but they don't really have masters, do they? They don't really have people who help give a context to life, in terms of, they don't have practice, and no one's teaching them an Ekon car. I swear to you, Okay. Nobody's teaching them that stuff. Nobody's, you know, even they do have access to some of that stuff. Most of them don't really have an integrative approach. So
You're saying basically they know of these things, they know of these practices, but you know what, if you don't have a mentor or guidance with it, then
yeah,
it's hard to
they know of
make
it.
it from
Yeah, like one of them goes, yeah, all that shit is great. You know, like that's very different than actually being inside it, you know? And so, yeah. So, but what I would say is it's still very different than being in a Shaolin temple, right? If you go to a Shaolin monastery, you're going to have a direct experience of certain training and certain, you know, you're going to wake up and you're going to, you know what I mean? Although these guys are as good or as kind as anyone, you know? So the Eckankar. What does the Eckankar do? The Eckankar is an incredible psychoneurological tool. That's what it is. Just because it's 7,000 or 8,000 years old doesn't make it any less just a piece of psychoneurology. It really is. Because what the Eckankar does is got another way to raise your vibration is to help guide and direct energy moving through your systems, keeping it from bleeding out in the lower chakras, keeping it from bleeding out the top of your head so you get all spacey, and bringing it through your heart, which is, by the way, the middle. The heart is the middle of your chakra system. It's really the center. We think of the heart as high, don't we? My reason why I think we think the heart is high, because I think we're so low. I think our world and our life is so much in the lower chakras. The way we think, the way we orient ourselves, the way everything is about physicality and density. So the lower chakras are so much more real to us. The thinking of the heart is that most people think of the heart as high up. You know what I mean? It's not that high up. It's just, and Donnie talks about that. Donnie Epstein is saying that consciousness is shifting from just the shit that's here and the solid stuff to becoming more and more abstract. Where does all genius and innovation come from? Up here, not down here. It comes from the higher chakras, not the lower ones. Here's another thing. When, remember we talked about this, so I don't want to get too far off it, but remember I said one of the biggest things to say about psychoneurology is it's an inside job. And it's because if your life is going to be amazing on the outside, look at what is going on in your head leading up to that. You know, it's really your head. If you're in alignment, your head was ahead. Your inner world was ahead of your outer world. If your outer world is ahead of your inner world, you're going to be pulled instead of moving ahead, aren't you? You're going to be pulled in these experiences. You're going to be pulled on these directions. But if your head, your guide, your dream, you already are in a different space, you're the one guiding and leading. So part of your job as a psychoneurologist is to create, and some of you, we talked about that at 2 summits ago at our, you know, our special little private summit, right? We talked about how do we create heaven inside? And your life, you know, has to be a function of that. If it's not, you're being guided by outside stuff and you're not going to be that happy. I can promise you, you're not going to be that happy because you're going to feel like shit's coming up and you're having to force yourself to respond to stuff instead of feeling pulled along in a good way, guided. So, so it is work, you know, like we say, you know, but let's make sure everybody's got that question really well answered, okay? Because I will be quote unquote testing you, but what it means is I want you to be able to articulate it and speak it out. And some of you speak all the time and it's easy for you. But some of you are not used to speaking the concepts in class because I don't have you speaking them out. And that's part of our whole new foundation. From now on, we're going to be speaking stuff. We're going to be talking about it. And of course, in an environment that's totally nurturing and supportive, there is no, you can't do anything wrong. You can only learn, right? Everything we're all 100% there for you. And we believe in you. But part of being support of you is that you can talk out the things that we want to see talked out, that you can actually say them and communicate them and articulate them. Because if you can't, then you got nice feelings, but you don't have the ability to help inspire them in others. And that's what we want, you know, at least inspire this wisdom, right? To pass it along. Wisdom is really, really moves through you when you can share it. If you can't share it, it kind of stops. It's not fully received. It's not fully received. In Kabbalah, by the way, there's two concepts, and that's the closest there is to good and evil in Kabbalah, even though if you read anything in English, Chris, I didn't want to get into it, but one of the concepts is one of the greatest Kabbalists of all time that I actually knew in person briefly in Jerusalem, would teach us the Kabbalah that's written down is in Kabbalah. Kabbalah that's taught on a blackboard is in Kabbalah. It's never supposed to be written down. But more than that, real Kabbalah is basically there are things that you can't talk about because we just don't have words for them. That's all it is. There are concepts that you experience that we don't have physical equivalents of. So the only thing you can do is talk to another person who's experienced them. And they talk in metaphor. Oh, you mean like the light comes in here and your heart opens this in the vessel? And they go, yes, yes, I know exactly what he's talking about. But somebody else who's reading the Zohar or reading that stuff is like, shit's poetry, or that shit sounds like this. And anybody who thinks Kabbalah is like, you take these 4 words and you put them down and you do this. Now, that's back in the mechanistic, dense world of stuff like, oh, you're going to use this word of power and you're going to use it like this. That's bullshit. That is lower Kabbalah. The way you get into a space is you get into a space where you're not using things, okay, where you become aligned and you're serving. That's so different, okay? And so there's 2 quintessential energies in Kabbalah. So part of the energy thing in the Ekankar, make a question 5, because we're going to come back to the Ekankar, but question 5 is, what are the 2 primary concepts or energies in Kabbalah? And
I think that's question 6, right?
Question 6, excuse me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because I may be a little off on the number, so thank you. Yeah, please speak up, anyone. So what are the 2 primary energies? They're not good and evil. Okay. Evil comes from the word Eve. We've talked about this. Okay. Evening, devil. Okay. And by the way, just so you know, any books in Kabbalah that have words like evil in them, they're just Hebrew people or who come from the tradition who are using Christian concepts and words, and that's pretty much in everything. When I talk about the 13 principles in Hebrews, I've spoken about them in the last week with 2 rabbis and they didn't even know it. The most basic things. Most Jews are walking around with Christian concepts and they just don't know because we've lived in such a Judeo-Christian society. And so you got to realize that that's fundamental. So when you're talking, most stuff that's anything in a book is pretty washed up. But basically, so just to simplify this, and you try this on as I'm sharing it with you, you got to try it on. You can't, I need you to feel into it. Don't just try to get it in your head. Well, one concept they say is to receive just for yourself alone. And next to that, I want you to put static. When we're calling people selfish or the negative words of, that they're attributing to evil, Eve-like behavior, that's the concept. The second energy is to receive for the sake of giving. Now, in the old stories of Kabbalah, there were 2 basic universes. You don't need to write this down, Ben and Ma. And the original universe, all the vessels, and vessels nothing more than an abstraction about trying to explain you, a piece of God that was in what they call a kli, a vessel that would fill up with light. All the vessels tried to receive and hold for themselves instead of sharing with others. And what happened to the vessels? Deborah, do you know? And don't worry if you don't, because I know we're speaking like a different language. Anytime you learn different Kabbalah, use different language and different references. But do you know what happened to the first universe?
What happened to the first universe where
Right.
where it wasn't
According to
sharing?
Kabbalah, like the story of the first universe, what occurred that we have a second universe, for example?
What we talk about is sharing understanding, knowledge, and wisdom, and then emptying your cup. So you're constantly in a motion of emptying your cup. So you're always receiving new information, and then in service is where you gain the wisdom. So
Right.
that's how.
I'm talking about there's 2 universes, the universe of Ben and the universe of Ma. So yeah, it's okay. It's a
I
different.
don't know Ben and Ma. So.
Okay. So Ben is the Hebrew word in Kabbalah for the first prior universe. And then Ma is the word in Hebrew for the current universe. The universe of Ben, each one of the vessels, each which is sold, tried to take in the light and hold it for themselves. And by the way, that particular characteristic is what later the Christians would ascribe to evil, you know, that it takes for itself, that it's not giving, it's not sharing, it's selfish, right? What happened to the vessels is they broke. They couldn't hold the light because they're not meant to that way, and they shattered. Now, here's the pieces, and this is from a book called the Bahir. It's a text that goes back over 4,000 years, and it basically says that this is all abstract, all right? This is like old, you know, it's almost Native American. It's so abstract, right? So the pieces supposedly fell to the ground, whatever that means. And those broken shards, those lenses that are partial, became what was known as Ra, or what would be mistranslated as evil. And the concept is in Kabbalah is that when we call something Ra, you're seeing part of the picture, not the whole picture. So this all works with, you know what I mean? This all works with, I know Yvonne knows this because we've done enough Kabbalah, but basically, so the concept is, for example, let's say somebody has diabetes and they're eating chocolate, right? The concept from the perspective, and it's also known the line versus the circle. So the line is a piece of the circle, right? That's like broken off. So from the perspective of the line, they're doing something loving. They need chocolate. It feels good. It makes them feel nurtured. From the concept of the circle, but it'll hurt them, right? Because they're diabetic, and perhaps it'll cause certain problems with their insulin and that kind of thing, or they could have other issues. Another example that's used is, I'll be politically correct. Let's say the executive had this woman, she has a page, a male assistant, and she has an affair with him, but she's married and has kids. And from the perspective of the line, she's doing something good because love is good and making love is good. But from the circle, it may hurt certain other people that she loves, okay? Those are the concepts in Kabbalah of line versus circle. There isn't like evil as opposed to, one last thing, and then I promise I'll move on for any of you that are getting bored by this. If you look at the Crusades, when the Crusaders were coming, who was evil to them? Go ahead, Melissa.
The
Celtics,
existing people.
the Celts. Yeah, the Celtics, what were they doing? They were going to bring civilization and Christ consciousness to those heathens, right? Now, to the Celts, who was evil? The Crusaders, because they were raping their women and lighting shit on fire and causing all kinds of mayhem, right? So Kabbalah would say it's Ra. They both have a partial picture. You know what I mean? Neither one is evil with a devil's horn and a pitchfork, which was what those Catholics took of Wicca, an ancient belief that believed in horns to show the male aspect of shit. But like that, they didn't believe anything was evil for the purpose of being evil. It just didn't make any sense. They believed that there's partial. Okay, so the Crusaders were the bad guys to the Celtics, the peaceful Celtics. To the Crusaders, the Celtics were godless heathens. You understand? So they both thought they were the good guy. Kabbalah would say that's Ra, okay, which would be mistranslated as evil, okay? So the concept in Kabbalah is that like these shards, these broken shards are like a piece of the picture. And anytime you look at just a piece of the picture, you don't have the whole picture, do you? And so if I just looked at when I was in the airport, how dare these people do this? Don't they know who I am? Or whatever. I'm just looking at one little piece of the picture instead of looking at like people are doing their best. And even in somehow, this is a blessing to me. You know what I mean? And somehow this is really, I'm lucky to be here. And now I get to share with my beloved family, right? Or, there's just more to it. Okay. And that feels more like a circle to me. How do you know when something's a circle? You feel it, don't you? And by the way, how do you know when something is a circle? What will you feel? Here's the word, peace. Shalom. Part of shalom is means whole, which is the opposite of what? Partial. Shalem is the root of shalom. When you feel peace about something, a deep feeling of peace, it's more likely to be whole. Things you don't feel peace about are usually things that are fragmented. Bijan says the same thing. He doesn't have any of that training because it all comes from different places. Yeah, Chris.
It kind of reminds me of a story you told us a bunch of years ago about, I forgot, I think it was in Greece. No, it couldn't have been Greece. But the main theme was good and bad things would happen to this guy. And he would
India.
always say, this too for the good.
The horse, right? The horse in
Beautiful.
India. Yeah, the beautiful, the incredible Vedics. Yeah, the Vedics. The Vedics say Western idea of happiness, which is very partial and has just little reasons for it. It's just another form of unhappiness. It's just another form of misery. They call it bliss. Bliss means it's whole, it's uncorruptible. It can never not be good. But we've experienced that as a family. Remember, we talked last class, we said about anytime when we're in our whole state, we see that everything is for the good, don't we? You know what I mean? And then we do have mentors and people that are teaching us. Abraham talks about that. Again, Byron Katie talks about that. So many masters we talk about all say what? It's all for the good, isn't it? It has to be. You may not see it, but that's because your view is what? Partial at that moment. So, yeah. See.
So I have a question on that because that is my belief system. Yet I also think about some of my clients that have had some pretty horrific shit done to them.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a different way to language that? Or
Yes.
because I mean, obviously, like I would never tell them, oh yeah, don't worry, like this is all for the good. That's my belief system and what I've eventually incorporated into some of the stuff that I've been through. But there's a lot of people that have had some really significant life events that I would never wish upon anyone. So how is that languaging different in that model?
Yeah, it's such a relevant question, and especially to PEI, right? How do I influence people? To influence, I really need to let them know that I feel that they're felt, seen, heard, and felt. So the first part of it, Z, is to first make sure that they're fully acknowledged and that their frame is fully acknowledged, okay? And then once you fully, and they feel, and they say back to you that I hear that you really fully acknowledge, something like that. In other words, I get calibration that they know I'm with them. And then once I'm with them, then I can start to offer frames, you know, and I even language it like this: love, you know, if the person, like I was talking to a woman who owned one of my places and she was a Holocaust survivor. And she talked about how she was a child when it happened. But I gave an example. Now, what am I doing here? And we'll talk about this with language patterns. I want to create a space where she feels that she would, anyone she loves, she'd want them to feel better. Okay. And then if I can get her to feel that, then I can say, and I want that for you. So she doesn't feel like I'm minimizing what she's went through. Do you understand? Like, I don't want her to go, oh, don't worry, it didn't hurt. Like, I want to go, because in this case, I said, Rose, your mom said that to you during the Holocaust, because it was almost like, did you guys ever see the movie where the guy pretended it was a game show when he was in the Holocaust with his son? And
Beautiful Mind,
yes.
or Life is Beautiful.
Life is Beautiful. Yeah. Well, her dad actually did something like this with her. Not quite that extreme, but he, and she actually didn't know what to make of it. And when we talked about it enough, she started to cry happy tears that it was so beautiful. So I had a baseline, and you could say, well, you're just padding this now because you're giving a great example. Yeah, it's true. But like, I would try to find that with anyone, in other words. But what could be worse than the Holocaust? I mean, there's not like a whole lot of things than having electrodes put inside you and things like that she had happened. And, but from that space of feeling how much her dad loves you, and just go, I'm not your dad, but I do love you and I do care about you. And so I'm going to share with you, if you allow me, you know, and I'm going to talk more about the structure rather than just the specific. I'm going to share with you a way to interpret that, because I would want you to, you know, have a space that can help you feel better, you know, and I'm like, are you open to that? You know, are you open to that possibility? And if the person says no, I respect it. Remember, we're only here to do this. We're never here to do that, you know, but in this particular case, you know, she said that. And what I did, because if I do this, it's just going to make me look good. So let me just say what I did instead. What I did was I just structured sentences to show how what she experienced helped her make such a massive difference in all these other people's lives. And she had told me that she wouldn't trade it because of that ability. And I just reminded her of that, you know, that even that, her soul, she believes, chose, you know, and so I just put the pieces together from other experiences she was telling me about these people who cry, who she changed their lives so deeply, and she's made such a difference. And, you know, that even that was a loving gift. And that in this case, what I did to help her was frame it that it was a loving gift that she chose, her soul chose, not even the God chose to give her, but her own soul chose this, you know, because it's pure love. So when somebody, yeah, it's true. And, you know, the reason why it's so relevant what you are bringing up, Z, is because in the psychological lexicon, when I do work with mainstream therapists, there are some things that are just framed in such a way that that's so bad. You know what I mean? In fact, I was supposed to call somebody, oh shoot, it's a woman I worked with already. She had 7 rape traumas, all happen consecutively. And in that space, you know, I mean, it's like, obviously you have to be very delicate with how you handle that. But at the same time, she's now in a space where she lives happy and I would say free, because she's not running that. That's what I mean by free. And you know, but when we have these kinds of situations, we have situations that a lot of people in the helping field feel that they have to say that's horrific. You know what I mean? And what I would say is, if I'm speaking to another person who understands my language, we only have one intention, and that is to empower them to run that in such a way so that they feel the best they can possibly feel. That's all. Does that make sense? I mean, it's like, while still holding their dignity, you know what I mean? But I would say this absolutely absurd statement. There's absolutely nothing in the world, if you're conscious enough, that has ever happened to any human being that they cannot be joyful and happy after. And I'll give you an extreme example. This is one of my heroes, okay? But there was this amazing mystic, and he was, the Romans were, you know, the Romans decided he was so powerful and he'd created such an impact that they were executing him, but they weren't going to, like, you know, the basic Roman thing is just crucifixion, which there's no way they were going to do that for this guy. So I won't go into too much detail, but have any of you heard of flaying? Flaying? One of the ways of killing is they peel layers of flesh with these hot metal combs away from the person, layer by layer. And it's supposed to maximize the import, you know, the neurological excitation, you know. And when it happened, and there was a historian named Josephus who tracked this and recorded it. And he was a mystic of that time, of one of those sorcerers. He was a Jew, and he became a Roman. And that's why we still have it. Thank God he did that, because some would say he was a traitor. I don't think so at all. Because of that, we still have this great, you know, the Romans were able to keep this historical record because of this guy. So while this guy was having layers of flesh torn away from him, and some people were mourning and screaming and wailing and crying, but he was laughing. He was laughing, and he was in joy. Now, by the way, is that physiologically possible? Hell yeah. Any of you guys know that. If you've done any hypnosis, you know that you can have somebody feel like something is tickling you, can't you? You could have something burning you and it could feel good. I mean, yes, you absolutely. And our mystics and martial arts, hell, we've seen what Wim Hof can do. We know that Wim Hof could pull off a lot of this stuff, right? So basically, while this guy had layers of his flesh being torn away, he was laughing. And one of his major, we'll call them generals underneath him, even though it was military, he's like, he was calling, the word for teacher back then was Rob. That's all rabbi means. Doesn't mean like priest, like holy person, just means teacher. He's like, Rabbi, why are you laughing? And this is what the guy said. He goes, there's this old ancient, imperative we say after we meditate that God's in everything, where we feel love everywhere. He goes, it says you will, when you understand this, it's not a commandment. You should have. Any of you heard love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind? That's actually, again, translated wrong. It says this oneness prayer that God's in everything. And it says, when you realize this, you will love the divine with all your heart, soul, and mind. Not you should, you just will. And it says you will love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And he says, so he goes, we've always said that we will. And I've loved the divine with all my heart and definitely all my soul. I could feel it every moment, but I never knew how to love God with all my might until now. And that's literally how he transitioned out. He felt it was the ultimate act of love to pass that way, and he passed out of his body. And if you know astral projection, he was fine or whatever. But the point is, I don't think there's too much worse stuff than that. You know what I mean? In terms of at least horrific ways to die. And by the way, he was very famous. There's stories that were made up about him. I don't know if those were true, those other ones, where tragedies were happening and these horrible things were happening. And every one of them, he would say these words, Gam ze latova, means this too is for the good. So whether you're a Sufi, whether you're a Kabbalist, whether you're a martial artist, whether you're a holy being through any of the traditions, the spiritual or religious traditions, they all hold ultimately that God's in charge, or that the divine is in charge. And it's what you want to call reality. It's moving towards the good. So that's what's so important. That's why I'm so glad you brought that up, Z, because I don't think there's anyone else here who's quite in that mainstream world the way that you have to be. You are on a regular basis, where tragedy and suffering almost has a slightly sacrosanct energy about it's so bad, you don't dare make light of it, or you don't dare like in any way say that this isn't absolutely horrific. You are definitely dealing with things that are considered horrific. And I actually worked with some of you remember there was a lady who helped us in a summit. She's a precious soul. And she was working with transgender stuff. But she got so inside it, and she wasn't really doing her work. So that she was just like, I've seen people suffering. There's no way that God could be good or whatever, because the things they had were so horrific and so terrible and horrifying. And what I would just say to that is this. If anybody says things are so horrific and so terrible, part of it is what actually happened, right? But isn't the suffering not coming from what happened? The suffering's coming from the story and the meaning that they made about it, isn't it? Isn't it?
Sure.
The Holocaust was a horrible experience, but I actually know for a fact, a mystical understanding, which I won't share because you got to be in a certain space to realize what a total crazy ass blessing it was. And from that experience, and with every cell in my body, I knew that souls chose to go through that, and they like stood in line and pushed each other out of the way to go through that. Now that sounds like crazy unless you experience it. But I would absolutely say there's nothing in all the lexicon of human experience that a being cannot go through, that what makes it suffering is their story about it and their meaning about it. And by the way, you could make that suffering being stuck in an airport overnight, for example, or somebody beating you, or somebody touching you, or somebody doing anything to your body or to your flesh or to your mind. Okay. And Are there people that have had virtually everything happen to them and they're joyful, beautiful people? Yes. Yes, there are. So, there is no such thing. There's never an action or an occurrence that has ever occurred to a human being that in and of itself has to be tragic and life destroying. It's merely the story we tell about it. I will tell you one experience I've had. I think some of you who've talked has worked with molestations. The worst thing I've ever found in the molestations is the things that these individuals, mainly children, were told or about it, or what they made, the story they made, the meaning they made about it. It wasn't the molestation. And I'm not saying this to be insensitive, but do you know that there were times in history where like human beings who happen to be in a position like noble, quote unquote, noblemen or women, whatever the hell that, where sometimes they would rape a woman, and there were some people who said it was horrible and I was raped, and there were some people that were like, had a whole awesome story of how like the king blessed them with, and these kids were proud of the fact that they were part of the lineage of this noble person. Which story would you rather carry through your life? Again, if you put vibration above shit in your head about what stuff has to mean, then you start to look at things differently, don't you? That's part of what it is.
When I'm thinking about, what you're saying is very, is true. But I'm thinking to myself, because I've seen, clearly some horrific things. I'm thinking how I would have handled it without saying that it wasn't horrific. For instance, when I have a 2-year-old child that comes in who's been run over by their parent.
Or been molested or whatever. And remember what we said at the beginning of this conversation. What's the first thing we do?
You acknowledge them.
Perfect.
And then obviously you give them love.
And that's the answer for that context, because you only have you only have a piece of time with them. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've had situations where I was in the Middle East where I had brief periods of time with people that were moving through my hands. I helped extract these people from a situation that was horribly abusive and painful. And then I wasn't even going to be able to find out what their name was or how I could ever find them again after I brought them out of that situation. What can I do? I can be clear on what I can do and clear on what I can't do. Do you understand? And that's what you do as a physician, right, Yvonne? It's like, especially when you're a physician, you do what you can do. And in your case, it's going to be just as important to be aware of when this becomes this, because as soon as it becomes this, it's not healthy for them or you.
Yeah. I'm thinking to myself, gosh, my community would be so much more healthier, my goodness, if we were really truly taught, how to really manage our vibration and deal with these extreme stressors that kill us sooner, than need be.
Can I rephrase? In a way that I think you'll appreciate.
Sure.
Where they kill themselves sooner than they would.
Well, because clearly I feel like that's what I did.
Yeah, one of the primary things that that's coming up a lot in my practice now is I've got a group of patients like that therapist that are finally to the place when they're unhappy, where they go, I'm doing this to myself. No one else is doing this to me. And that is like, until you can get to that place of responsibility, it's like, if you're unhappy, the real truth is you're hurting this person I care about. Remember, we already said this. I said, if Yvonne makes Z feel terrible with things she says and does, we would want to put a stop to it, right? We'd say, gosh, don't do that, right? But if Z makes Z feel terrible from things she says and does, is it any less that it should be stopped? Do you understand? It's still the same thing. If Z makes herself feel bad, it's still the same act in a way. That's takes a while to get people on that level, but it's a fact. So when people start to go, no, I want to tell you how bad they made me feel. Like, they may not be ready for me to go, no, you mean what you mean to say is how bad you're making yourself feel. Yeah. But they may not be ready for that. So again, I share what I can, but this is a super powerful talk,
Absolutely.
what started what you're saying, Z and Yvonne, what you're adding, because we live in a world where, what do you say when something seems, in the subjective language of judgment, which we all share, horrific? And the answer to that is, we want to influence them, don't we? We want to influence them however we can. And the first way to influence is first acknowledge and make sure they felt really seen, heard, and felt. And then from there, let them know, out of love, my intention is, if you're open to it, to help find a way in your nervous system to thrive, to feel better. Because I absolutely know for a fact that's a possibility, and I'd love to see you thrive if you're open. Or I'd love to see you first, I might say whatever they're open to, not in pain, or not in as much pain, or not in the same kind of suffering. Again, I'm going to pace to where they're at, right? So,
Absolutely.
for some people, I just say not suffering this way. Because if I said, I'd love to see you dance in a jig, some people would want to like throw knives at me. But that's only because I'm saying something that's so far. That's all. That's all it means. And the other thing I would say, by the way, for some of you is also, please be aware of where you're saying this in your personal life. You don't necessarily need to go this far in your personal life. In your personal life, you might make a different choice than in your professional life. Does that make sense? For some of us, our personal life, we just might want to hold a little more of a boundary, because there are certain people that are running things, they're hurting themselves. And the only reason I'm ever going to dance with their dance is if I'm there to change it. I'm never going to dance with their dance if I'm not to change it. So if somebody in my personal life is really doing that, and I don't, I'm not going to plan to take them on as a client or patient, I just don't play. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm going to keep myself happier that way. Does that help? I'm still going to be good to Colby. If she's making herself miserable, I'm not going to start making Colby miserable. Why? Oh, she's being mean. I should be mean too. So if this was a home play assignment, it's not. I would ask, why if somebody's beating themselves up, will I naturally start to beat myself up with them? And you know what the answer is? Mirror neurons. Mirror neurons. It's just the way we're built. So we have to override that. Okay. So, but thank you for extending that, Zian and Yvonne, to this beautiful, bigger structure. Okay. To this bigger, beautiful structure. But let's take it back to, so the last question we had, I want to go back to the one before it, which is, how does the Ekankar work? Why does it work? And the fact of the matter is that by energetically managing how our energy flows, you are being a psychoneurologist. One way to control or direct that is to direct it directly. So, you could do the Ekankar. Now, I believe all these things should work synergistically. Do the Ekankar, feel strong, feel loving, feel good. And by the way, if I want to condition myself, what's the best feeling to get out of fear and anger and paranoia? And obviously stop sucking on the teat of misery. So in my case, I would say, if you're on the news every day, you deserve what you get, okay? Like, that is sucking on a teat of misery, okay? It's going to make you feel bad. It's designed to do that. So one thing is, don't suck on the teats of toxicity. But the other thing is, what do you do? What will make you feel love and gratitude every day? And you all have different answers, but part of it is that. And can I make a suggestion? One of them would be what I'm going to is that love and gratitude process we do for 15 minutes that we're going to do in about an hour. Run that every day. I mean, you'll purposely guide your mind and your heart to do it. And also, I hope I sneakily, and I mean sneakily in the best way, I hope I sneakily made it so that your brain will confuse, your emotions will confuse past stuff that absolutely happened with future stuff as already happened too. Okay, I hope that I've mixed them together enough that they all start to feel like love. And if they do, it's very easy to manifest. And I am going to do another one, a brand new one that I'll do, but I'm not going to do it this week because I'm just not feeling it. I'm going to play the one we've got. But that would be another thing, to daily condition yourself so that you're feeling it. And then also inductions, which we do weekly together. And then also, other processes like actively choosing chakras that feel good. Another way of saying it is states that feel good, And then, of course, add processes that can help rewire those things, but it's not going to be enough. I mean, wiring is not enough. If you people, do any of you know people that are just really in NLP? We call them NELPers. They really love, are any of them exquisitely happy? Most of my friends, they're just very mental. They're very cerebral, and they're really trying to get control. It's really a control thing. You know what I mean? The one thing, the people I know that are happiest, a lot of them don't know any of this shit. They do know how to guide their feelings though. That's what I noticed. The people I know that are masterfully happy, they know how to put their hands on their guts and lead them. Of course, I'm being metaphorical, but you know what I mean? A lot of people want to figure out stuff in their head. It's a whole different mechanism to guide your gut, isn't it? That's what I'm trying to sell to you, in this class, is to try to literally manage your gut, to guide your gut. That tool alone is one of the biggest tools. You know what I mean? But certainly the Eckankar is amazing it's a tool that's thousands of years old that will help close off the things for that moment that are in fear and guide your nervous system into something that feels better. But another one is the other thing we're doing now, that, just going into your heart, inner heart meditation, or guiding yourself into that and feel the love, feel the things you're really grateful for, and mix them all together with the things that haven't happened yet, and feel the love for both of them. Let them feel like they're one. That's another thing that'll do. So all of these things, they work on top of each other. Gestalts are going to be amazing when we get to them for some things for integrating identity, for identity integration. But just for today, if you look down these questions, you're going to see it goes like this. The universe, that the psychoneurologist should understand physics. You're not really a mystic if you don't understand physics. And physics is really that everything's about energy. And that energy really is, in psychoneurology, that energy moves through your body, through either your spheroid or your chakras. And amazingly, you can by guiding that, you can guide your direction. Now, in my opinion, Kundalini is not a way to guide and manage all your emotions. Suneva always used to be like, oh, well, we've got that phobia cure in Dr. Levry. I'd be like, yeah, but look at the person who taught it to us. She literally has anxiety attacks. I would not try to program my unconscious just with Kundalini and energy like that. I would program my certain fears and patterns and phobias by unconscious work. And for some of you are a little too control freakish, because whatever's happened, it's shaking you up and you find yourself hunkering down. The only way you're going to change is voluntarily conditioning. Really, you voluntarily conditioning yourself over and over and over again. Because a lot of you will just hunker down too much to do some NLP type processes. That's a little harder for some of you. You know what I mean? But ultimately, would it work if what's the best way to get a result? Use them all, right? Use them all together. Synergistically, when you feed yourself in nutrition, do you just feed just salad? Who does best? The person who just eats vegetables, the person who eats vegetables, who eats liver and organ meats or whatever, and the person who does, the third group of nutrition, which is breath and that kind of thing. Person who does all. is going to do the best, right? The person who takes in all this stuff, who does chi energy and breath work and these things, and biomedical nutrition and nourishing traditions, and the person who takes in all those things. Well, for psychoneurology, the person who does energetic work, things like the Ekankar, who does Kundalini, who does breath work, also guiding their nervous system, also doing induction and those things, and also taking in all of those practices at once, including voluntary or guiding, intentionally conditioning yourself. That's it. So doing all of those practices, definitely you want to do the Ekankar. Definitely you want to do, daily conditioning. And the question you want to ask yourself is, those of you that do it, a lot of you, I think almost all of you do daily practices here. So those of you that have daily routines, could you imagine if you didn't do them? Could you imagine how different your day would be? Have you ever missed doing them or messed up on some of them? I have. It's crazy. I'm like, stop, life stop. Wait, I got to go back and start. That's the way it is. If you don't do daily practices, you're not living at the level. There's no possibility you're living at the level you can live. If any of you are doing daily practices, you know that for a fact, don't you? You know for a fact that if you didn't do your daily practices, you would not be living at the same level, right? There's no question about it. You couldn't, could you? If every day you got up and it was just random shit that you just went through and you didn't do practices to condition yourself, how different would you be? You wouldn't be the same place. There's just no getting around it, There's no getting around it. If, for example, if you didn't shower for months or, weeks and months at a time, you'd have a very different experience of your hygiene than if you do. And if you didn't do cold showers, you probably would feel a little less good than you do if you do. Okay.
I was thinking, I so love this, this topic. I mean, I just, I'm getting so much out of this. And I think about, like, for instance, like how I came here. I felt like my energy was disorganized. Because that's why I couldn't do pardon me?
The Qigong.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I mean, I couldn't, there was no stillness in between movement. I mean, I was moving in between. I so specifically remember, but being able to, training myself with, moving energy upward, having energy go down and all these, that's why my health changed. I mean, it makes so much sense. So much sense. So I just love this conversation, and bring it, talking about the energy movement. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Can I just check in? Are you all on board with it? Because I'm always concerned. I don't want some people feeling like this isn't relevant to me, or, are you all interested in the concept of energy movement and Kabbalah? Okay. And I'm not saying that to ask you to comply. I'm asking because I really want to make sure that I'm connecting with you, that I'm giving you what you want. I want you to feel fed and make sure you're getting massive value or whatever, that you feel like you're getting value from the time. Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to just real quick, here's the points we wanted to cover today. One is, like I talked about, the physics of the structure of the universe, understanding that thing. If some of you are into Kabbalah, then it's got to have Ben and Ma and those parts in it. Those are the basics of Kabbalah. And if we were learning them in my class, my Kabbalah shiur, you wouldn't hear them like this. I'd make sure we were in a meditation, and I'd make sure that I would say to you this: do you remember the time, and see if you can connect to it right now, when you were filled? Do you remember some time in your vast memory of being filled with love just floating, everything you ever wanted, just totally filled with love and completely there? Do you remember? Do you have some sense of it? Some of us more than others. It's the word for feeling the memory of it is called rimanu. It means it's in it's just in there, your vessel. You do have the memory. We're filled with life. At one point we had it all. We're still there, by the way, but we're in another way, we're not there, but technically we are still there. Just so you know, you're still enfolded. there's an understanding. And I would make sure that all the students in the class experienced it, not had it in their head, but felt, oh, I have that memory. I remember being loved. Okay. And then I would take you through creation and how it occurred and make sure you feel each part of it. And there's an understanding you start to have was you come from this light. It was in your past. You feel it. You come from this light. And to this light thing, God, you get to return. You must return. It's better than you can ever imagine. And that you get to go home. You're already really there anyway, but you don't experience it when you're in this body. And there's good reason. So you can you can do great stuff in here, and you're allowed to make it any movie you want. So it doesn't have to be happy, but why not? Why not make it joyful? You can. And so we would do that. And I just put in this class, I just want you to understand as a psychoneurologist, a concept of what the mystics say. And the mystics in all places are saying everything is energy. Okay. And the physicists will let you know more about it. Yeah, I'm going to use Kabbalistic references because they're very convenient. One of them said in the Bahir again that at a certain point in history, the lower waters of science and deduction and the upper waters of mystical understanding, induction, which we know Einstein stuff came from induction, didn't it? They will come together and they will verify each other. So science has to help mysticism, and mysticism has to help science, and you cannot understand mysticism without science, current science. There's no way you can understand certain concepts because they're completely abstract. It goes back to the Kabbalah, why Kabbalah really written down doesn't do anything. It's just reference points because they're talking about stuff that you have to have the memory, the experience of. Like, yes, 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 I know what you're talking about. And otherwise, if you don't have the experience, you know what it's like? Someone talking about love. And if you've never felt love and you've never experienced love, you will not understand love, okay? And the way the world is, in the Hebrew world, by the way, was Rav Kaduri, that 104-year-old Kabbalist I'm talking about, would say somebody could a 5-year-old know love? Yeah, a 5-year-old could feel love, can't they? They can experience it. And Rav Kaduri says a child could step into love and feel it, but you could have the head of the Neuropsychiatric Institute go, you can't understand love. I'm a genius and I know all this and I don't understand the neurochemical storm completely, because he's looking at it from the outside, isn't he? He's not subjectively experiencing it. All of Kabbalah needs to be learned subjectively, not objectively. You will never learn real Kabbalah. Kabbalah means to receive. So you can't receive something in your head. How were we thrown out of the Garden of Eden? Because we tried to understand instead of experience. Kabbalah is pure experience. It has to be experienced for it to be pure. Yeah, see. I don't know if you just froze. Yeah, she froze.
You know, you didn't finish Ma. You did.
Okay, so
Ra.
yeah, so Ben, it's shattered. So Ben, each one of the vessels, and again, it's totally abstract here, so you got to realize that. And that's why I wish I had you in a place where you could feel what I'm saying. But each one of the vessels tried to hold it and it shattered. Then the universe of Ma was created. And in that universe is the second energy, receiving to give. Each vessel receives the light and shares it, receives the light and shares it, receives the light and shares it. How well do you learn when you just learn for your own edification versus when you learn because you're going to teach this class? You learn very differently, don't you? And that's what started this whole thing. I started saying, until you can say it, you don't know it. That's why I need you to speak out psychoneurology, not just, I need you to say it. I need you to articulate it. Because unless you can teach this, and I mean verbally teach it, you're not a teacher. And this is a teacher program. So doctored means teacher. So it's about articulating, okay? And there's something else. If the energy to receive to give is that profound, and there's a whole other reason about that that's really so beautiful, but how does that change your understanding of how you want to show up in the world? One, you don't show up anymore just to give. And isn't that what we've been taught? We're just supposed to give, right? That's false, isn't it? That's exhaling without inhaling. It doesn't work very well. Most of our moms were that way, weren't they? We call it giving from a almost empty cup. My mom was that way. You know what I mean? Kabbalah calls it the giving that really takes. And if have you ever had family members that even if they're giving, there's something fundamentally selfish about it? They're really about themselves. Like, you feel it, don't you? You know when they're not really 100% about you, right? And you know when they are. And by the way, it feels better when you are about another giving. That's why I'm saying this stuff we're talking about influence, the psychology of influence. It's really about making sure that you get interested in helping them. Because it serves you, doesn't it? If you have something to give them and you know it kicks ass, if I know, what I just talked about in Ekankara, if I know I can help someone's energy body and I can help them process differently, aren't I motivated to help them understand it? Understand chakras, to understand these things? I got something beautiful to give them. You all do. So when you start to realize, what about Deborah, the moms or the kids or the people are out there who don't know how to make themselves happy? They're wandering around thinking that feelings are just shit that floats over their head like a cloud rather than actually they can create it. When you know that, that's all the difference in the world. What about when it's like when you really start making it about them, and I'm not saying not about you. I'm not saying that like exclude yourself. I'm saying that you're really here and they feel heard and they feel taken in and then they feel supported and they feel nurtured. Isn't that the best feeling you could ever give yourself? Doesn't that make you feel fantastic if you're doing that for another person? It feels so good. And guess what? That's the most effective as an influencer you could possibly be. How good is that? Right? It's just the best you can imagine. So anyway, energy, everything's energy. Psychoneurology is about movement of energy, helping do that. We went into a little thing on Kabbalah, and basically, we're going to be going over the next few weeks the PEI model, and the 6 aspects of influence. And now here's my assignment for you before we do a bio break. Okay. My assignment for you right now is, and I want you to use this over and over and over again if you want, but you can change it anytime. Right now, is it 7, Yvonne? Is it number 7? What's the question? Z at 7? Okay. Number 7, here it is. Write down at least 3 things that you are incredibly grateful for. That just could be something that's happened to you, or a way you showed up that you're so proud of, or an experience that you had that made you feel good, or love that you got. I always think of Melissa because she's a dog person, like from your dog. That should be one of them. I mean, just some moment you had of feeling so incredibly loved, or someone loving you in your past. Chris, it could just be your first love or something that makes you feel absolutely unquestionably loved from the past. Could be a person, could be a whatever, or it could be just the time where you just felt incredibly, something made you feel happy. Whatever. At least 3 things. Write them down, okay? And then here's what else. Write down at least 3 things that you would love to have happen. That's the way I'm phrasing it. What are 3 things that you would love to have happened already? 3 things that you're incredibly grateful for that happened in your past. They could be things you did. They could be things that were did to you. There could be things that you Kabbalah, you received. It could be anything, just 3 things that really, but if you want to, you could think of 3 things that support the 3 things you'd like to experience that you're looking forward to have happen. So if you're looking forward to have happen a certain relationship, you might want to think of a time when you felt totally loved in the past. You could. If you want to experience a level of abundance more, you might think of abundance come to you now or has already recently come and what it feels like and the gratitude for it. Okay, see how that can work out really well. If you want to experience a connection to God or the divine, you might want to think about times where you felt those shining moments of connection. So feel into those gratitude from the past and feel into those things that temporarily, as you know from Happy Pocket, maybe they've already happened, but they haven't happened in your timeline yet. So what are you looking forward to happen? What would you just love to be true? Write down those 3 things, okay? 3 things that would just be fantastic to experience. But you probably already experienced them, but it's okay. Like, so let yourself experience the happiness of experiencing them. So 3 things, I hope that's not confusing. 3 things in the past, 3 things in the quote unquote future. Just go ahead, keep writing them. Now I'm going to give you another minute or 2. And all I want you to do is just nod to me when you're done. Okay, great, Z. Great, Chris, thank you. And the great part about it too is you can change them, you can evolve them, because as you get thinking juicier thoughts will come into your head, which is wonderful. Gosh, I've had people that are in such a bad place, they can't even think of anything good they want to happen. That means they've really starved that sweet, loving, beautiful person out. They've kept them so busy that they haven't even given them time to have stuff implanted from the divine. Desire means implanted of the Father. And it could be of the Mother, of the divine. Desire, what are you open to letting the divine implant within you so that you can live more fully? Okay, and again, you can keep evolving this, but okay, Yvonne, where are you at on this?
Actually just kind of strengthening my 3 things that I wrote. I wrote them and I'm like, well, let me write it, just adjusting it. But I mean, I'm finished.
Okay, good. How about you, Valerie? Awesome. Deborah? Okay. Melissa, how about you? Okay, now here's the thing for you all. Don't worry about making, you know how they go with goal setting, make crystal clear, sharp goals. Don't do that, okay? Feel the feelings of gratitude. I want you painting these things with love and gratitude. I don't want you painting them with crystal clear, sharp, it's this much amount and this much money by this time. No, absolutely not. Feel the feelings of stuff that's happened that was fantastic. You did not go, I'm so happy because I made $50,000.27 that month. You're like, that was an abundant month. I felt so rich, right? Code it with your soul, not with your brain, okay? This is energy work we're doing, soul work. This is not about making things sharp and crystal clear. That process will take care of itself. Just get with your gut. Got it? Everybody there? Okay. So we're going to send you off to a bio break so that you don't have that kind of pressure. And we'll come back and we'll see you back in about 10 minutes. Okay. And I'm not going to ask what music you want this time because we're just going to put on, whatever. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Dr. Foreman, I have to run down the block to pick up my meal preps. It should be less than 10 minutes. It's literally 20 seconds away, but just in case, I might be 5 minutes maximum late.
Okay, buddy. I'm going to do everything I can to stall so that you can do the process, okay?
I'll rush as fast as I can.
Right. Okay, please do. Thank you. All right. And so the rest of us, I hope you grab some good food that's nourishing, nurturing, and we'll see you in just a couple minutes. Blessings, everyone. Okay, hope everybody had a good break, and there we are. And so let's take a moment and take a deep breath in. We're going to do our mission statement right now, just so you know. So take a deep breath in and let it out. And another deep breath in and let it out. And a third deep breath in and let it out. And from that space, let's begin with ahava. We should say it 3 times. Ah. Okay. And I'm going to ask everyone to please take me off mute unless it's absolutely necessary for you to remain on mute for some reason, so we can all say the mission statement together. And Melissa, would you like to lead the mission statement?
Sure.
And you can keep the doggy on your lap while you do so for extra energy for all of us.
Our mission
Our mission
Our mission
is to educate and empower
to
is to
educate
Educate and empower
our
a new standard
a new standard
standard
of heart-centered doctor,
of
of
heart-centered
heart-centered doctor,
uniting the wisdom and practices
uniting the wisdom and practices
of the ancient masters
of the ancient masters
with our newest understanding
with our newest understanding
of the body,
of the
of
body,
the body,
the mind,
the mind,
mind,
and the spirit.
and the
and
spirit.
the spirit.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. Any questions about the things we were talking about before break, before we go on to our process? And everybody's got your stuff you've written down, right? You have the 3 things from the past that have happened, 3 things that you love to experience that actually have happened, but you just haven't experienced them in this timeline yet. That's okay. This will help put you on the quantum timeline to make sure you do experience them, because there's multiple quantum timelines. Let's make sure you're on the one where you get to experience it fully. And so everybody good? Any questions? Anything about anything? Giving, receive, life, etc. Psychoneurology. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna. So that is the end of. Please.
Sorry, Dr. Vaughan, I was just going to say it was really good. It was a really good. I really enjoyed this morning or the last few hours. It's been really good.
Oh, good. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. I'm really glad because I wanted to string it together in a very hopefully cogent way. So it was hopefully cogent, but I hope deep. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And that is the end of part 1.